What's up, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome back. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. Got a return visitor today. We're shooting from my restaurant, Della, in Brooklyn, and that's what this whole show is going to be about. New York is back, baby.
Definitely.
New York is back.
Definitely. It sure is.
So I want to kick off today with a quote that I read early on in the pandemic when everybody was saying, New York is dead, everybody's leaving. And this is an old quote. It may have been even 100 years old. Somebody penned it a long time ago. I can't remember who it was. Sorry, buddy. Can't remember your name, but I don't think you're around anymore anyways. And it was something to the effect of, the obituary of New York has been written many times, but it's always been proven wrong.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So that was like kind of fuel for me early on in the pandemic. And I know you had a similar mindset with that. We'd like to welcome back to the show Compass real estate broker. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Tyson Lewis. He was on last June of 2020. We did it remotely.
It was crazy. I was crazy.
Yeah.
I was learning how to use. I'd never used Zoom before,
Zoom.
or whatever it was. Yeah.
And I was sitting at the bar. We did it remotely, but it was the Friday before they opened whatever. I think it was like phase 2, and real estate agents were able to go back into showing, and restaurants were allowed for the first time to seat outdoors. It was the first time we'd been able to do anything other than just takeout. And I just remember doing that show. We were talking all about that, how like, oh, it's exciting. New York is, we're getting a little sliver of life back, and announcing that like Monday restaurants could open up outdoor dining. And as soon as we got into the show, I walked out front, and 2 of the restaurants across the street were already setting up their outdoors, and I was like, oh no, did I miss something? Am I wrong?
That's when I yelled at you about the outdoor space.
Right.
I was like, what are you doing, man? Let's go.
Yeah, but only one of them. One was just getting prepared. They were just getting the layout set up. The other one actually went forward and started seating a couple days early outside. They just didn't care. And I remember being out there, and a cop car pulled up, and everybody got kind of tense because it was packed. And the cops walked up to the window, and they were like, "Are you here to shut us down?" They're like, "No, we want some food." And I was like, man, that was close.
Nobody cared. Everybody needed to get back to some semblance of normalcy, even if it was outdoor seating.
And those guys had been closed too. Like, they were one of the only ones that actually closed for a couple months, and they had just come back. And they just scramble and get some money together. So last time we talked, you were with Halstead.
That's right.
And you switched mid-pandemic.
I moved from Halstead. Well, Halstead no longer exists. It was acquired by another company, a sister company, but Halstead ceased to exist, and I took that opportunity to move to Compass, which was something that my team and I had been contemplating for some time. And so it was kind of a natural time to do that. It was a little bit weird to come to a new company when none of the offices are open. All the people I'd met who had brought me onto this company, I'd never met in person. It's all through Zoom, so it was a very odd,
that's
surreal type of thing. And it feels like it's so long ago. I mean, I've only been there, it's not even a year yet.
Yeah.
It seems like so long ago.
It's funny because those things are still playing out, where we had a private event for BAM here last week, and people had been hired in the middle of the pandemic, and they'd still been completely remote. Yeah. And at the last minute, BAM was like, all right, take your teams out and like treat them to like a small party. They couldn't do like a big company-wide party, but the teams are maybe like 25, 30 people. So they're like, all right, you can do this. Here's your budget, go out. And so everybody fractioned off and went to their favorite places. And so they're rolling in here, and people had never met. They hadn't met each other yet. They'd only seen each other because a couple people were hired in the middle of it, and you're like walking like, oh, that's what you walk like. That's what you look like. You're that tall. You're that short. Like
we have a dedicated marketing consultant. One of the great things about that company is they have a lot of marketing consultants, and they only handle a handful of agents. And we've been working with this person we'd have like 50 meetings on Zoom or one of those, Google Meet or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we met with her 2 weeks ago for the very first time in person. And it was like we'd known each other for a year and been through the trenches with really trying to ramp up marketing coming out of COVID. And then it was like sitting across the table from her. I felt a little awkward. I was like, hi, this is what I would look like.
Were you like, you smell good, actually?
It was odd, but...
It is odd. It's so strange, but we're coming out of it.
Yeah.
Which feels good. And so last year, was a strange year, I think, for everybody. But we were talking about it the other day, how usually the summertime is kind of slow for real estate, but last year was super busy for real estate. And so a couple interesting things. Tyson didn't even know about this. I just brought it up, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" So just recently, the Wall Street Journal featured two neighborhoods in an article, kind of pitted them against each other in terms of how things played out for them during the pandemic. And one of them happened to be Windsor Terrace, which is where my restaurant's located and where Tyson does a lot of his business, versus the Lower East Side, and saying how the Lower East Side average rents and property values dropped. There were way more vacancies. Where a neighborhood like Windsor Terrace was oversaturated, bidding wars were going up, the average price of a rental or a home purchase went up, and businesses, I don't want to say they thrive, but we have more businesses now in Windsor Terrace than we did in February of 2020. There was not a lot of vacant space, certainly not vacant apartments or houses. Things were flipping real quick, right?
Right. And the pandemic, we can all agree, is horrible for so many reasons, but relatively speaking, Brooklyn did quite well compared to the rest of the city. I mean, we were, everyone was reading stories or hearing stories about everybody fleeing Manhattan, or they'd say they're fleeing the city, they're fleeing the city. Right. They weren't fleeing the city, they were fleeing Manhattan.
And only certain parts.
And really they weren't, they were leaving temporarily, because I think a lot of people of means left temporarily, and now we're seeing them all come back.
Yeah.
A lot of them come back. And so that was a little bit of an overblown thing. Manhattan is actually surging right now. But yeah, for sure, the rental market in Manhattan took a huge hit. The sales market took a really significant hit. But Brooklyn, we are the suburbs of the city, just like Connecticut and New Jersey and Long Island blew up in terms of residential real estate. We definitely blew up. And we had a big migration of buyers who were living in Manhattan, who wanted to still be in striking distance of the city. They didn't know what was going to happen with their jobs this year, whether they're going back full time or one meeting a week or whatever. So they wanted to be, within commutable distance, but they don't want to be in the city. So here they all came to Brooklyn, and Windsor Terrace is like a perfect Park Slope, Windsor Terrace, Greenwood Heights, Sunset Park. These neighborhoods, you can get a townhouse for $2 to $3 million, and so you had people.
It's chump change.
Yeah, who would not bat an eye at spending $3 million at a 3-bedroom condo. Now are like, wow, I can get a whole house for that, sure.
Backyard,
and so that was really fired up the market. Our team, and we heard a lot of other teams, did an amazing business in 2020 as a result of that.
Yeah.
And the rental market here did suffer a little bit, but recently it's been better than I've seen it in years.
So I had this conversation with a couple at the bar last night. They hadn't been in over a year. It was because they moved from Windsor Terrace to Park Slope because they got more space outdoor for cheaper rent than they were paying here. So parts of even Brooklyn that was, Park Slope was one of the higher rent areas, along with Williamsburg and like Brooklyn Heights and Dumbo, places like that. You would expect to pay top market value anywhere in Park Slope. And they said they just got a better deal, so they went for it. And it was funny because there
was more inventory there too.
What's that?
More inventory there for sure.
Because same thing, I think there were people that were living there who had the means to take off and come back whenever they wanted to, because it's just a more high profile.
Just because of the nature of the architecture, I mean, for those people who are watching who don't know Windsor Terrace, it is predominantly townhouses.
Yeah.
And
12-foot wide wood frames.
Yeah, and most of those are not rental properties. They're properties that people live in. So there just aren't that many apartment buildings, whereas Park Slope does have a lot more of those. Right. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
They said too, they ended up signing a 17-month lease because they signed in December, which is a good time. Like it puts more power in the renters, the rentees. How do you say that? The person trying to get the lease, because summertime is when things really, the leasee, yeah. The summertime's when things really flip around here. So they got in at a time where it's like not many people are moving in December. and they were forced to sign a 17-month lease so that it flipped again in the summertime when the landlord either could offer them the same place for higher rent, or if they took off, they could go big on that. So.
Yeah, our landlords are usually trying to get out of spring to spring schedule, or it's early summer. It's been a little wacky the last year. I mean, going back to what you said earlier, the seasonality of our business, a real estate business, has really changed in the last year. Probably will go back to normal, but last year it was completely gone. Typically, August is the slowest month of the year, and then there's a slow period around the holidays at the end of the year. But August is slow. I mean, anybody, if you're familiar with the neighborhoods around Park Slope and Windsor Terrace, they empty out. People leave. They all run for
Parking
wherever they go.
Everywhere, right?
Yeah, you can park wherever you want. You can get a seat at any table. It's great.
Right. No wait at
It's
restaurants.
not great, but it's not great for you.
I used to think it was great. I loved it before I went to restaurants. I was like, man, you can go anywhere and there's no wait. And I'm like, no.
But yeah, so I'd tell anyone if they want to sell their home, I'd be like, and it was July 15th, I'd be like, can you wait till September? Wait till the kids get back into school. Wait till the cools down a little bit. People get back to business. But last year August was insane. We had just opened up. They would allow us to start showing again at the end of July, and there was just a ton of inventory, and people were sick of being stuck in their houses, and they were out looking at real estate. We had an insane August. So, a lot of the typical patterns of this business have been flip-flopped or disrupted. But this year it seems like I have a feeling this August is going to be slower than ever.
Yeah.
Because nobody could travel last year. Nobody spent any money on traveling. Nobody could do anything. Now they're all like, let me get out of here.
Yeah.
I don't even care where I go or how much it costs me.
I'm seeing the signs too. It was the same for us. Like August is typically our slowest month of the year, and last year it was one of our best months. Not saying much. It wasn't great, overall speaking, but for the year it was. But I'm already starting to see the signs of like
I'm seeing
summer's past, but we'll see.
August is starting early this year, I think.
Yeah, so August is. It certainly feels like it outside. Oh,
it's okay because honestly, I mean, for me, we had a maybe like 6-8 months worth of activity crammed into the last few months,
right.
And it's been so busy. I mean, you talk to any real estate agent, any real estate attorney, anyone in that business, we're all just hanging on for dear life, and we all have dark circles under our eyes, and I think it's not the worst thing if we slow down for a second and take a breath.
It's been the same for me, and I agree. A little, still trying to get staff back. It's probably similar in your industry too. Certain people are just trying to get things checked off. You're probably doing a few more things than you would have in the past.
I am. I don't mind it.
I don't mind either, but it's like after a while, you're like, okay, now it's time to outsource.
It's interesting. I mean, staffing is not really a big thing in my business, but from what I'm hearing from all my friends in the restaurant world and other businesses, I was talking to my friend that manages Fletcher's Barbecue, and he said, I'm working like shifts. We don't have enough people to do the things that need to be done, the basic things. We can't find people.
I tried to call them on Father's Day. They were like, we're not taking any more orders at 7 o'clock.
They're slammed, and I'm hearing that all over the place.
Same. It's good. It's a good problem to have, but
I guess so.
Trying to work that out. All right, we're going to take our first break. Hang tight, everybody. We'll be back in just a minute. All right, everybody, welcome back again. We're talking with Compass real estate broker Tyson Lewis. He's essentially based out of the Windsor Terrace Park Slope area in Brooklyn, but does work all over the city as well as Connecticut.
That's right.
And anywhere else? South
That's
Beach.
Enough.
That's Beverly Hills.
In Manhattan a lot lately because there's just a lot of stuff going on there. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of renters going back there to take advantage of those rates we were talking about earlier. So, and I almost did. I was just like, wow, maybe I should just go over there.
Just get that 32nd floor penthouse with the pool. Yeah. Just for a little while. Just a little bit. Take the chance.
Anyway, But Brooklyn, mainly Brooklyn.
Mainly Brooklyn. And I'm talking about how New York is back. New York is on fire. It's hot. It's really hot today.
It's really hot.
Physically, but it is really like pumping back up. It almost like, I'd say 90% of the day feels normal. Like, and we were even talking in the last segment how the business cycle and the flow is more reminiscent of summers past, where you start to see certain neighborhoods empty out. There's parking spots everywhere, fewer lines and waits at restaurants. So, and you even mentioned this one might be a deeper plunge than we've seen in the past, just because of all that pent up energy, and people couldn't travel. People, a lot of people, a lot of people certainly were laid off or experienced reduced income. But I think
plus people don't have to work the way they used to. So many people can work remotely, so
they can
take a longer vacation and be somewhere
and
else.
Still make money, right? It doesn't impact them financially in a negative way. But I think a lot of people also just saved. A lot of people had no idea what was going on. Like, well, we better be smart with our money. And now we're coming out, and it's like, oh, okay, we have some cash. We can take that trip that we always wanted to take. So I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of trouble. But I mentioned it just before the show started. How real estate agents occupy this really interesting space in the city panorama. The way you experience the city different than other people, because you're involved in residential rentals, residential sales, commercial rentals, commercial sales. You have to get to know each of these communities where you're doing business, and it's not just one. It's not like you're in Windsor Terrace, you only sell in Windsor Terrace, and you have to just get to know this neighborhood. You have to do that across the city, so you get involved in a lot of the aspects of it, and especially somebody like you, so, you're a musician as well, so you've got these interests, food and beverage. You're quite the aficionado.
I'm quite interested in food,
and as of late has become a student of Muay Thai.
That's true.
So, you're probably starting to even you probably have to know where are the gyms, where are the good places to eat, where do people get cheap food, where do people get the more high end stuff. If you want craft beer, you go here. There's 3 liquor stores. What's your favorite? You have to get involved in all of those things.
Sure.
How does it, compared to a year ago, what's it like now? A year ago, when people were buying homes sight unseen, did you have to talk about that as much as you normally would? I
don't even remember what was happening. It was this weird dream that happened. For me, and this is, our whole team is about this. We're never just selling a property or renting a property. We're really selling a lifestyle. We're selling the area, surrounding that property. In New York, we don't spend all the time inside of our homes like you might in the suburbs or something. But so yeah, it's just the natural part of the business to know, where the trains are, where I'm actually kind of bad with the trains because I drive everywhere, so I get caught all the time. But
I think the trains are pretty bad.
But yeah, you want to know where your local, high-end restaurant, low-end, casual stuff, where the best entrance to the park is, and all those things. And so for sure, I never believed that this pandemic would be forever. I don't think any of us did. And so I'm for sure we would continue talking about the amenities that were around, but I guess maybe a little more guarded because we didn't know what amenities would still be around when all this, what would survive and what wouldn't. But we can talk in a general sense about the area. If I was talking about Windsor Terrace, I would say, it's a little bit farther walk to, it's a little quieter in the center of the neighborhood, a little farther walk to some of the amenities and restaurants. There's a strip on Prospect Avenue that has great restaurants and shopping, yeah. But
checks in the mail.
Or if it was a buyer who wanted to be just in the heart of all the action, we would talk about it that way. Right now, just today, I was talking to a buyer and mentioning restaurant names specifically. I probably wouldn't have done that so much last year, except I would have mentioned yours, of course, because you fueled the community.
Remember, you're supposed to say the pesto is great 3 times.
The pesto is so good. It hurts.
So that was going to be my next question. What's it like now versus 2 years ago? Now are you well, this place is very, sensitive to everybody's, concerns about public safety, where this place, they kind of do what they want. Is the dialogue a little different this year? Now that things kind of feel back to normal, but it seems like the discussion always kind of finds its way there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. We have to be careful,
Right.
because we say one thing and it's different 2 weeks later. Then they come back and they yell at us.
Kind of like the restrictions, right?
Yeah, I mean, like why they don't like us to talk about schools, because the Department of Education can change the zoning anytime they want. So I sell you at a home today because you want to be in a certain school, and then halfway through our transaction they change that. Then
Which happened
then
here
who
a
gets
few
yelled
years
at?
ago,
It's me.
right?
It happened. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a huge deal actually. People got sued. It was a bad thing. Yeah, so we're a little cautious about that, but certainly I have specifically said, like this place was open throughout the pandemic. They were so nice and so cool and taking care of their community, and it was a place where a lot of people gathered outside, and this one really got me through, and that kind of thing. But I don't know. I imagine agents all over the city are having similar conversations.
So it may have gotten a little bit more intimate in terms of those interactions and sharing those stories.
Yeah, and for sure, it's tempting sometimes if there's maybe a spot that you didn't have a great experience with in the neighborhood. It's tempting to kind of let people know that, but at least for me, I don't like to go negative, and I'm really careful to just point out the positives of.
Yeah, and I don't mean in
area.
terms of that. I mean literally in terms of places' responses, in terms of
Well, it speaks to the
social
resiliency
distancing
of
and all those things, where places letting people cram in, where you knew if you passed by Trader Joe's, you'd see that line out the door and the security guards.
I've never been to a Trader Joe's.
You're not missing anything. I've never been to. I went to the one on 14th Street once. Where I used to go was the wine store, the Trader Joe's wine store on 14th Street, because it's the only one in the state because of New York State liquor laws. You can only have one.
Really?
Yeah. So there can only be one juice box. There can only be one Kings County wine. There can only be one.
That.
Yeah, you can't franchise liquor stores the way you can everything else. You can't have multiple locations. You can have one off-premise liquor license in your name in New York State. That's it. So if you have a liquor store in your name anywhere in New York State, that's the only one you can have. You can't be involved in any other ones. You can have a liquor store in 17 bars and they don't care, but you can only have one liquor store.
Things we choose to care about.
Yeah, I know, right? So that's the only Trader Joe's wine store in all of New York State. So I would go there just because they had a lot of things. It was interesting, but yeah.
Well, I haven't been in one, but definitely Trader Joe's is frequently voiced as a selling point for proximity to Trader Joe's.
Right. Whole
Not
Foods.
so much Whole Foods in the city for me. I haven't noticed as much, but certainly in the suburbs it seems to be a thing. Trader Joe's as much as a train station.
Interesting. So my point being is you could visibly see that they were monitoring how many people were coming into the store, making sure everybody had proper face coverings. Where there was, you would hear stories of other stores locally. It was just there was no real monitoring. People were packing in a can of sardines, things like that. Were people asking those kind of questions?
Not so much.
Okay.
I mean, I can't recall any specific conversations about that kind of thing. I'm sure it's happened, and I'm sure we're seen as agents as kind of boots on the ground in the locations where we work. Mm-hmm. So for sure, people ask all kinds of things, but I don't think we got that down in the weeds about the COVID stuff.
That's good to hear that people were, just still.
If I was asked, I certainly would have done my best to answer.
Right, right, and you all are, besides just having to know everything in the community, also just arbiters of personal brand in terms of, that you're not selling anything of your own. Other than your reputation.
No, I did sell my own house last year. There was a nightmare. I was the worst client I've ever had. But
who were you? You were the worst client?
I was the worst client ever. But yeah, no, we're not selling. Yeah,
you're selling somebody else's 6 to 8 figure home, and that's got to be tricky. So you're you guys really have to hone in on your reputation Because sometimes like things are discovered about the house that are not ideal along the way.
For sure. No home is perfect, and we have to walk a fine line of, obviously being ethical and transparent about things that are serious issues, and at the same time selling the property and convincing someone why it's a good. The reality of this business is we're not selling TVs, we're not selling cars. I'm not going to convince you to spend $1 million on something you don't want.
Right.
It's more of like, telling you all the things that you need to know, walking you through a process that's very, very complicated, and then the selling part is really the neighborhood. That's what we spend more time selling the neighborhoods than we spend selling the actual homes. I'm sure I have clients right now that are furious that I just said that, but it's true. I mean,
Well, that's why you're in the hot seat today.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're talking about. We're going to take another break in a minute.
Spend my life in the hot seat.
Right. When we come back in a moment, that's really what I want to talk about now is like, New York City from your perspective these days as the person that's really selling the neighborhood, because you have to, you were in it all before and you knew the inner workings,
right.
And then like this big distance was created and things have definitely changed.
It's been amazing to watch. We
Yeah.
got to get into it.
Yeah. So let's do that. We'll take another break. We'll be back in a minute. Everybody hang tight. All right, everybody, welcome back again. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. The topic of discussion this week, New York is back. New York is hot. We're talking with Compass real estate agent Tyson Lewis. He was on just over a year ago, right as things were just entering phase 1 or 2, whatever it was, of the reopen. And now Governor Cuomo has cut the strings on almost all city regulation. The state of emergency has been lifted. A number of things have come with that. Some good, some bad. No more cocktails to go.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
I know. I mean, it doesn't affect me so much because
That's why you should own a restaurant and a wine store and a liquor store.
I've heard that's a good idea.
Diversify. You'll be ready for anything.
But again, you can only own one liquor store. Many bars and restaurants as you want, but only one liquor store. It is a good move.
Yeah, it's a good move.
So yeah, the other thing that they're lifting at the end of next month is the moratorium on evictions.
They say they've renewed it many times.
Right, exactly. I'm a little concerned about what that's going to do to the city that we've come to know again after kind of being reclusive for many months. But
yeah. I mean, I know that's not what we're here to talk about, but I will say,
yeah, no, it's fine.
There are definitely two sides to this. I have clients specifically who are landlords who pay their mortgage with their 2 rental apartments, and they've been really hurt by tenants who have stopped paying, and it's been hard for people on both sides of it. So it's a very tough issue.
Yeah, imagine you have a small rental building, and it's been 16 months now, and you haven't collected any money on that.
I mean, it doesn't seem to be widespread that people are just not paying, but it does happen.
Yeah.
It happens even when things are normal, and now it happens, and you can't do anything about it, which is
just wait. It's
rough.
They may get that money back. Maybe, I don't know if there's going to be some sort of bailout in their direction, the way that they tried with the restaurant revitalization fund, which ran out quickly. But they got some money to some people.
But another side to that also is that the landlords that we work with, we've had conversations about they're very skittish about taking on new tenants, even though it's a time when you want to be taking on new tenants. Right. But they're like, asking more questions than ever before. They want to see more documentation than ever before because they're concerned about getting into it. Everybody's nice when you're trying to rent an apartment, but it's what happens like 3 months in, and so they're just really nervous. A lot of them are very nervous about, making the decision to rent to somebody and what that could mean down the road. So
even more scrutiny on your financials and stuff.
I'm
sure they're probably asking right now if you're moving at this point. Like, did you stay current with your previous lease?
Mm-hmm. I have landlords who never asked for a reference. They just they never wanted to know that are asking now. Please call the references. Please call previous landlords. So people are being very cautious.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Probably should have been all along, but there's a few things coming out that's like, we should have been doing this all along.
There were a lot of things that came out of this that probably should have been happening a long time ago. New York is a city for how progressive it's supposed to be.
Oh, man.
It's very backward in many ways. I mean, any of these attorneys who have been doing business in a very archaic fashion until now will tell you that their business has been vastly improved by being able to do things remotely.
Yeah.
That they've been doing in the rest of the country for a decade. And
packing everybody in those old courthouses and government buildings. It's awful.
And
going
you know,
those
it's like the
places.
best technologies come out during wartime, right?
Yeah,
Because it's like pressure breeds innovation. And
Yeah. So, you know, as I was saying in the last segment, you know, you have to get to know all these neighborhoods, and you have to really, you know, run around the streets, and for a while nobody really was, and now the market is, you know, everything's back open and the market's still like good and hot. How does the city look to you as a person who, you know, again, you're a musician, you know, going, you know, you've historically gone to venues, and you know, that industry has taken a big hit, really into food and beverage, but now also fitness. Like, what are you seeing now as compared to like 2 summers ago, 2 years ago?
I don't know if it's just because of what happened last year, but it seems busier than ever in every sector to me. I haven't seen a lot of any indoor live music yet since this. In fact,
happening.
I might go tomorrow night to Mercury Lounge.
Nice.
So it'll be interesting to see. But I'm seeing, you know, a lot of bands and musicians that I know like are starting to book shows and are feeling comfortable with that now. And so
Ball games are like,
you know, ball
back
games,
full
people seem to
capacity.
be, I mean, there's a lot of pent up energy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if some of this is just that, people just trying to get it out of their system and it will calm down again, probably a little bit. But I think that, you know, not to be corny, but I think a lot of people just realized what was important,
Yeah.
you know, by missing it for a year. I think a lot of people, you know, people get very cynical and jaded in New York City. We've all seen it all. We're all so tough.
Yeah,
We all seen
yeah,
it. But you know, and you can go to any museum you want and see, like, you know, and see any music you want. And you got all the best food in the world, and you got all that, until it's taken away from you, and then it's like, wow. I mean, we were all saying, you know, I would just get killed. I don't even care what band it is. I'll just take me to something. I don't even care what it is.
I want to see
know,
real drums.
I would, you know, what I don't know if you remember when I was able to sit in here for the first time. I almost like kind of started. I got a little choked up because I was like, oh my god, I was like, this could be a terrible. It's not. It's an amazing restaurant, but I don't even care. I'm just so happy to be, and I think that maybe some of that is translated into people still seem to be a little more tolerant of each other.
Big time.
Because they're all happy.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll go away soon.
Especially here.
I've noticed already. You didn't mention traffic patterns, so I drive everywhere. Traffic is more insane than I ever remember it before. And
so we bought a car in the middle of all this. I hadn't owned a car in
Great
15
idea.
years. Well, it was a great idea in January because there was almost no traffic.
Right.
But now it's like, it's crazy. A friend of mine posted something on Facebook. He's a really well-known drummer, and he'd moved. He's from LA, and he was gone for a better part of the last year. And he came back, and he has a car because he's a drummer. He's got to lug gear around and everything. And he just was like, literally like, did something happen while I was gone? Like, I've never seen so much traffic. Is it
well,
just
nobody
me,
wants to take
or-
the train.
Nobody wants to take the train.
So there's those people that now have cars, or people that bought cars during the pandemic, and they're like, "Wow, I like this."
like
this is great.
Brooklyn traffic, I think, is the worst right now.
Crazy.
Like, you can get into the city and get around there.
I mean, you notice that I'm late for everything, right? So I've had to completely change my calculation for how long it takes me to get anywhere. No matter what I think it's going to be, like I should really tack on another 20 minutes, half hour. It is insane. And the tolerance for that seems to have gone away already.
Yeah.
I've seen some crazy things the last few days, but
well, a lot of accidents. Like 3 times there's been like 3 car pileups here on the Prospect.
also people that never own cars are now learning to drive.
Oh boy.
And all the people with the city bikes who aren't used to riding bikes in the city, I think that should be illegal. Sorry,
The rebels.
But as far as restaurants, I mean, I go to a lot of restaurants and places that I could usually just walk in and sit at the bar and eat, which is one of my favorite things to do. I've been shut out of here and in Manhattan, and great for the restaurants. But it seems like people are a little more tolerant of slower service.
Definitely, I agree with that.
I don't know if you,
yeah, people definitely, and especially like you said, people realized what they valued, and they take better care of that. So if it's like your local restaurant and you really appreciate the place, and you appreciate the fact that they survived this and gave you refuge from your often tiny home or apartment during the middle of all this, even now that things have kind of kicked back, you'll still be fine waiting a little longer than you would previously, because everybody just did their best, and it was not easy, and it's still not.
Right.
And hopefully, like, there's some things we mentioned earlier, like, that should have changed a long time ago. I hope that's one of the things that kind of stays. I mean, the cocktails to go would have been nice to keep to Cuomo. Just saying, come on, Andy. But that I hope stays. If not, maybe they should write that in.
Yeah.
make that a new mandate. I would argue that one of the only neighborhoods that I see that is still just like kind of fucked up and weird is Midtown West, especially like around Madison Square Garden, where I now go almost daily to Hensel Gracie Academy to train, and it's a weird. I mean, it was always like creepy, like Penn Station and Port Authority was always strange.
Yeah, it's
like extra creepy right now.
It's sketchy. Right now.
It's like the 80s again. There's so many commercial vacancies, and I don't know what's going on in the high rises in terms of that office space, but it seems like there's definitely fewer businesses, fewer people on the streets. I mean, even like there are days where I'm there and I'm like, okay, it's packed. This seems like normal, but we're often coming out of there at like 8:30, 8:45 when people would be scrambling into the buildings, and it's like you walk down like 32nd Street and there's only like a handful of other people, and just so many. I mean, not for nothing, like these are vacancies that probably should have gone. Like there's this empty Taco Bell that we walk by all the time, and I'm like, that should have been empty. It should have been gone.
Yeah, and I think so. Some of those businesses that have gone away had very long leases. And I don't do commercial real estate in Manhattan very much, if at all. So, someone else might be better to speak to this. But my understanding is that a lot of these businesses have very long leases, and so it's not like just because your business isn't working right now, it's not like you can just suddenly one day just like turn it over to somebody else. You have to go and find that person, and who's going to take that rental space right now
at this point,
at exorbitant rates and. So
right,
and nothing happens overnight, and even if you found a space you wanted to rent and start a business, it's many months before you can get it to where you want it to be to build it out. And I still think that so many of those businesses survive off of the, a lot of these little stores like survive off of just the business they get from the one high-rise residential building nearby. It's like their entire community. Yeah. And so until we know how that looks, I think we're going to see that part slow to rebound.
Right.
I don't.
So you're saying some of these commercial spaces have like 20-year leases, and the landlord is requiring the previous tenant to find the replacement and not offering new terms on it necessarily. So I know some.
I'm sure that is happening.
Right.
I don't know for a fact, but that your lease doesn't just go away because it's COVID.
Right.
And Taco Bell doesn't take a space unless it's a very long lease.
Right.
So, around here in Brooklyn, you might get a restaurant that'll agree to a 5-year lease, but you're certainly not any less than that, because you're not going to do all your build up and build a business and be part of the community only to give it up in 2 years.
Well, people were doing that in 2015. I remember people would come to me and be like, "Hey, so this guy's got a space. I want to take it," and it's like a 3-year lease, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" But landlords were offering that up.
To me, that seems a little.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
You're not gonna break even in 3 years. It's just not gonna happen. If you're a digital service, maybe, but then you don't need a space. You know what I mean?
Right, and you need time for people to become accustomed to you being there and to being a fixture of that community, and so.
Gotta prove yourself.
I don't know,
Gotta prove yourself.
Yeah, so the commercial like retail, restaurant, that kind of stuff in Manhattan, I think is going to be the longest thing. That is going to take the longest to come back.
But that's just one neighborhood. Like I took the kids to, they wanted to go to Soho to go shopping. one day recently, and that was popping.
Yeah.
I mean, there were still some empty spots, but it was like jamming. I was like numbers I got. You could tell there were a lot of visitors.
And people who think that, what we were saying at the top of the show about the obituary.
Yeah.
People have written New York City's obituary many times. It's absurd. As long as you are a center of business, of international center of business and culture and art and food, it's always going to come back.
Yeah.
It might take a little longer sometimes, but it's always going to come back. There's this seminar that I look at. I might have talked about it before. There's the history of New York City real estate sales since the 70s, when they really began tracking these things. It's the median sale price has gone up every year since the 70s.
Yeah.
With a few little exceptions, and it was
2008.
Stock market crash or .com bubble burst, and then in all those cases the market rebounded stronger within 2 years than it would have been previous to the event. So I don't know what would have to happen. I mean, the UN leaves, what would have to happen for New York City to not be a great place to live? When one sector of the population decides it's not for them, it gets replaced by something else. When the market was in crisis in 2009 and real estate prices really did plateau a little bit, we saw, and people couldn't get mortgages unless they had stellar credit.
Right.
We saw a different type of buyer come in and start buying things. What would have to happen? New York does not stay down for long.
No. And we're tough. And we're going to talk about that when we come back, because Tyson's tough. We'll be back in just a minute, everybody. All right, everybody, welcome back. So we were just talking about how New Yorkers are tough, and Tyson here has gotten tough through the pandemic. He started taking Muay Thai. He learned how to fight.
I'll tell you what, I don't feel tough when I'm dripping sweat and barely able to.
Looks tough. He looks
up.
tough. What really brought that about? In the middle of all this, you're like, I got to do something. I got to get healthy. Were you making sourdough bread like everybody else?
I've never made sourdough bread, and I
didn't make
probably
any,
never will.
I didn't make any bread during this whole time. I barely ate it either.
I think like a lot of people, I did probably drink more alcohol during COVID. I had a lot of.
We're all guilty.
I was looking for ways to entertain myself. I would have my Zoom happy hours every day with friends. And I had my card game every other day on Zoom.
So it's a different kind of bread. It was a distilled bread.
And so there was that. So and the opportunities, just being, I wasn't out and about as much as I used to be. So I felt myself putting on a few pounds. I wasn't feeling super healthy, and I just was sick of it. And so for me, that was. And I'm not somebody who. I need a little bit of motivation or structure to my exercise. I'll motivate for a week and then I'll just stop doing it. It happens all the time. I have so many little exercise tools at home that I've ordered that have been used for 3 days. It's so stupid. And I just wanted, I wanted to feel strong again, physically and mentally, coming out of all what's happened last year, and it was it really felt like a fresh start, and I wanted to really lean into that with my personal health.
But you did take on, really monitoring what you ate and drank. And
trying to.
We talk about it often, and it's something that you bring up often, and that you didn't, you don't have a coach for that, right? So some of this you definitely have taken the reins yourself and made it a priority. I'm curious, as somebody who's really, you're a hard worker, you're constantly at it, you got the hustler, entrepreneurial bug. How has putting a focus on your health affected you professionally?
Interesting.
Well, you posted something about it on Instagram recently. That's why I'm asking.
Well, I certainly get up earlier, and when I get up, I feel better, so I can kind of launch into my day. I'm not able to remember the Instagram post that you're mentioning.
It was after training, and you were laying on the mat, and you were something about just putting in the work, helping me be better.
Oh yeah, well, I'm a very good real estate agent, but I also
And humble too.
Yeah, totally humble.
I was gonna say that, but he stole my line.
But I really do. And I used to be like really into this, and like somehow along the way, it just when my work took over, and I just got carried away, and I forgot, I guess, that feeling physically healthy really does make me mentally healthy and make me more focused and make me enjoy what I'm doing more. I mean, literally from climbing up 4 flights of stairs in a walk-up apartment to waking up earlier and just to being more focused when I'm having conversations with people on the phone. And so, it's all part of it. All these things are interconnected. So I think that's what I was alluding to.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I wrote, but that's probably what I was alluding to.
But
that's what I've been feeling lately.
That's how it feels. Yeah.
That's what I've been feeling. I mean, I really, it's interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. One of the things that we do when we're training is there really are, besides the gloves and once in a while a couple other equipments, there really is no equipment.
Yeah.
I really like that. I like that it really is about like doing stuff with your own body that's making you better, as opposed to having a bunch of gadgets that you're, that you need, whatever, all that stuff. Yeah, I really liked it. I really like it. So,
well, the goal is really to empower someone to like carry it with them wherever they go, because ultimately people travel, people may move away, and I think the goal of fitness is that health equals wealth. And you were talking about getting up earlier and being able to just like bang more stuff out. Are you familiar with Jocko Willink?
No.
He's a former Navy SEAL, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, big motivational speaker. He's been on Joe Rogan. He's got his own podcast. He's on a bunch of other shows, but keynote speaker and everything. And he talks about that all the time. Like he's always posting, like on his Twitter and Instagram account, his watch, which is his alarm clock, and he gets up at 4:30 every morning, and he gets up and does a banger workout, and then he posts pictures of like sweat and blood around his kettlebells and stuff on the ground. And he's just like, the whole point is like, get up and get at it. Like nothing happens for you if you just like sleep in and stay in bed and don't get shit done, and then like eat a bunch of shitty food and then drink your sorrows away. Like you reduce your capacity for achievement. And I'm wondering if that's like, if that is somehow motivating this for you.
It is.
That's how it feels.
It is. It's not happening quickly, but it's happening. I'm a work in progress, like we all are, and I'm definitely starting to see that. And if for me, it's like I don't do everything. It's all about moderation. And so for me, it's like, if it means, I'll just have one less glass of wine, and then I'll go to bed a half hour earlier.
Yeah. Slowly,
that's getting me to where I want to be, which is a lot more productive and a lot more, and not just like muddling through it, but actually like being on point with everything that I do. And it's slow. It's slow going for me, because I do love to just sit I love to have a plate of pasta in a bar and have 2 martinis, and but that's time that I could be using for something else, and so I'm working on it.
And I think like for me too, like really I tried to stay sharp this whole time and stay fit, because I had this feeling that we're gonna come out of this and it's gonna be hot like today. but that things would really be popping, and there'd be opportunity, and I think we all kind of sniff that, right? Like there's definitely like some chances to be taken and some big moves available, but it doesn't happen if you eat pasta and drink martinis every night.
Yeah, I got complacent for sure. I've always worked hard in my job, but I got complacent with what happened at the beginning and the end of the day.
Yeah,
and those are important times too. And
right.
And for sure, I don't know. Some of this is going to bring me back to how I was at the beginning of my real estate career. It was about 13 years ago. I was like the first one to get to the office every morning. I was the last one to leave. I had no business, and so I'm starting to do that. I'm waking up in the morning. I started doing it a couple weeks ago. I wake up in the morning, I look in the mirror, and I go, "You have no business. What are you going to do about it?" And
it just motivates you to like get that.
I'm still figuring out what I'm going to do about it.
That youthful fire, but I think that's really like the goal of martial arts. Like for me, versus just like going to the gym and working out. Like martial arts makes me feel like a kid again. It gives me that youthful energy, and you have that like that college football mentality where like I'm not pro yet. I got to go get this. That's what it does for me daily.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself into martial arts other than what I'm doing with you, but at the same time, I can see how it's like, I feel like it's probably the kind of thing where you never feel like you've reached the pinnacle of it.
Ever.
You're never, it's kind of like golf. Golf is, it doesn't matter how good you are, you can always get a lot better.
You still suck.
No matter how good you are, you still suck.
No matter how good you are, you still suck.
But also the attitude
is just like that. It's just brutal.
But the attitude, it's an attitude. It's not like I'm the best player or something. And the attitude is that there's always somewhere to go from here, and I think we can take that into business.
That's it. That's it right there.
That's it.
Let's wrap, everybody. Well, thanks for coming on again, man.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to do this live.
Yeah, I love it.
In person. I miss that big time. It's great to do it. So stay tuned. I got another great show for you next week. I'm not going to announce anything just yet. You got to check out my social media to see what's coming up. This is going to be fire too. So you guys have a great week. We'll see you next weekend. Peace out.